A very good morning to everyone, and a very warm welcome on this very fresh winter morning. Winter's finally decided to visit us. Today we are going to be discussing an extremely unique book, Ramayana Retold with Scientific Evidence, and for which Ma'am Saroj Bala has been conducting research for I think 15 or 16 years. That is how long it took her to find out everything and write the book. Now, research is very imperative when you're writing a book because it gives you the bigger picture. As an author, you need that because you need to know the setting, you need to know the location, you need to know time periods, and it might even, be important for you to build your character, the profession of your character, and so on. But at the same time, research can throw up a huge amount of information. So the author must always remember that research is a tool which is serving your story. So one must identify and decide to take that information which helps your story and not all of it. And that becomes very important. Otherwise, if there is so much information, then the story gets lost in that information. And I discovered it when I was researching for Padmavati. So I visited Chittorgarh, and there I came to know so much about Padmavati. There were so many stories, so many myths, so many legends. It was wonderful, in fact, to know them all. But I couldn't put all of them into the book. So I had to decide what I wanted to put into the book, and definitely it helped because it helped me to build the character of Padmavati. In the same way, when I was writing the legend of Genghis Khan, he was a nomad of Mongolia in the 11th century. So I really needed to research, not only about him and his life and how he built his empire, but even things like what were the customs, how did they live, what did they eat, how did they eat, what were the kind of clothes they wore. So those were very, very important because those were the nuances which made Genghis Khan into a human being and not just a bloodthirsty plunderer, which he wasn't actually. Because that is what I discovered when I went deep into researching about him and his empire. So now let's come back to this book, which is Ramayana Retold with Scientific Evidence. So ma'am, you have been, you've had a career in the Indian Revenue Service and you've been a Commissioner of Income Tax. So what is it that triggered this interest that you decided to find historical evidence for mythology? Ma'am, you can take it.
Thank you, Sutpaji. First of all, let me share with all of you that till the beginning of 21st century, I was secure in my most innocent but false belief that Ramayana and Mahabharata are all mythology and they have nothing to do with our history. I think it was not my decision. It was the decision of God Almighty that I should turn my interest to this subject. A series of events happened, 2001, 2002. Something kept on happening to tell me, no, you have to look in more. I used to wonder that the whole of the country, you go, you find places related to Ramayana and finding the same thing. But most interesting was that in 2001, one of my friends from USA mailed to me that Ram Setu, that was the first time NASA had put the Ram Setu picture, and they had written the narration along with that this is exactly at a location where Ramayana has mentioned, and almost at 3-meter depth. I started wondering if Ram Setu is there, something must be true about Ramayana. Then 15 days later, a friend came. Out of the blue, he brought the book, Ayodhya Ka Itihas. It was published in 1932, written by Pandit Sitaram. It had all the genealogy, in fact, till Ram and after Ram also, of Suryavanshi rulers of Ayodhya. And he had mentioned that Sri Ram was the 64th ruler of that dynasty. It was very convincing because all names of Bhagirath, Sagar, Harishchandra were there in that, which were ingrained in our memory. Then a few days later, Pushkar Bhatnagar, one of my younger colleagues, he brought these sky views, that he was a physics student, he knew Sanskrit, he read Valmiki Ramayana and he generated some of the sky views, saying that whatever is mentioned by Valmiki about the sky position at the time of birth of Ram, that can be seen on one particular date in 25,920 years or no other date. That triggered me that, I always, then I had a colleague, Ram Avtarji, he went to so many places and he said more than 100 places referred to in Ramayana from the, north, south, east, west direction and their ambience, he has matched. This, made me restless. I lost my sleep. I started thinking that are we teaching wrong history to our students? Are we turning our historical heroes into mythology? My question was entirely different. Can we do something about it? If we have to do something about it, then it should be purely scientific, so that every single fact we mention, we verify. That is what triggered my research from 2002-03 and went on. And that is how I came to finally write the book.
Lovely. So, ma'am, there's no dearth of people who believe deeply in Ram or in the Ramayana. So, why did you feel that you needed to, make his, prove his existence and prove that Ramayana was a fact? Was there something spiritual in the quest?
Let me admit very frankly that I was never a devotee, and there is nothing at all spiritual in my book. Many people criticize me for this, that there are people who believe in spirituality. That aspect has not been touched anywhere in the book.
So you're a pure scientist.
So, for me, there were two main objectives. One is, there are millions of believers, but the question was they were devotees. After Valmiki composed Ramayana, for him, Shri Ram was not a god. He is very clear, Valmiki is very clear, that he is probably the noblest of human beings ever born on earth. But then, slowly, because of his extraordinary deeds he did, because of the welfare measures he took, people accepted him as God. Nar se Narayan bane wo. Now, for me, I was wanting to know that, well, if he is historical, he is human, then only he can be our hero. A mythological god can't be a hero. This is more triggered by my son's reaction once when I told him quoted something from Ramayana. He was behaving not in the right manner. He said, if you want to give me example, give at least of a human being I can emulate. Why do you want me to emulate a mythological god? How can I be a god? Very correct. Younger generation would want to know everything through reason. So I decided, one purpose was that if Ram is historical, how to find out? Because if he is historical, then we must have the dates. When was he born? Where was he born? Where did he travel? When did he travel? What is the scientific evidence? That was one reason. And second reason was, well, a lot of injustice done to our three generations, past, present and future. Because as I was secure in my belief till the beginning of 21st century that Ramayana, Mahabharata, all are mythology, but they are all history. They are our heritage. They mention the true facts. The date of every single event mentioned therein can be determined with so much of precision that we can tell you the day, year, month, day, date, and even 2 hours time. So with so much of precision, and it's not only astronomy, you can go to 8, 9 sciences and find everything corroborating or supporting. So my purpose was twofold. One is When they are history, let it be known scientifically. Second is, as Dr. APJ Kalam had told me, work very hard, work to establish your history through scientific evidences, because in this country either it is a leftist history or there is a rightist history. There is no shared pride in our heritage. He says if you write entirely scientific history, that will create shared pride in our heritage. That's the purpose.
I think very, very noble purpose as well. Now there are numerous versions of the Ramayana. So why is it that you felt that you should base your research on Valmiki's Ramayana?
Very interesting question and very, very relevant. If you go into Ramayans, there would be no doubt left that Valmiki Ramayana is the original Ramayana. He has himself composed it and he has himself written in that composition that he started composing it as Ram became the king of Ayodhya. And when he composed it, he is not used the word written. When he composed it, he was wondering how to pass it on to the future generations. So he thought, why not resort to Shruti Smriti and let Lavkush remember and narrate. They went and narrated in Ram Darbar, your Ram assembly itself, in Naimisharanya, and it came for many centuries through Shruti Smriti Parampara, when finally it got reduced through writing. More than 1,000-year-old manuscript is maintained in Nepal library of this Ramayana. Now, after that, there are more than 400 versions of Ramayana written all over the world in different languages. But why do we all call them still Ramayana? Tulsi wrote Ramcharitmanas, but we call it Ramayana. Kamban wrote Ramavtaram, we call it Ramayana. That is the original Ramayana. So I decided that I will follow Valmiki Ramayana and I will follow it with utmost honesty, not tinkering with any of the facts mentioned therein, and all scientific evidences would be relatable to the facts mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana. That was the reason.
So that is the reason, because that is basically the original Ramayana. That is the original Ramayana.
Later on, whoever wrote, it is absolutely necessary that the impact of time, the thoughts of the author, the beliefs of the society at that time would have impact on author's writing. He can't separate it.
Yes, absolutely.
So, to my mind, Valmiki, whatever he wrote, was most original, probably most true, most correct, and one could verify it. And when it could be verified scientifically through 9 disciplines of science, almost every fact mentioned by Valmiki, my faith in Valmiki Ramayana got enhanced by 500%.
So like you just mentioned that yes, your research covered many scientific fields and disciplines. So let's look at Valmiki. So how did Valmiki's astronomical descriptions, like you said, sky views, help you in the research?
I think before this referring to astronomical, I will preface the thing with one sentence. Actually, my objective was, I was very clear by that time because I had been working since 2002, and I was very clear that the most authentic way of finding the dates and times is extracting all planetary references from Valmiki Ramayana, verifying them on planetarium softwares. Many of you might have visited Birla Planetarium or Nehru Planetarium, same software, it's a smaller version.
Did he actually mention what was the planetary conjunctions at that time?
Yeah. I have got, people, some ladies who are very emotional and devoted to Ram, and they say, you have made our day. We can see the sky when Ram was born. Because Valmiki has given complete narration, I think we have been unfair to Valmiki also, because to my mind, whatever study I have carried out and have asked so many colleagues of astronomers from all over the world, I don't think prior to Valmiki, anybody had such profound knowledge of astronomy, because observational astronomy. I am not talking of modern days, telescopes and all that. Observational, bare eye, whatever you can see in the sky, par excellence details are there. And if I tell you, you extract Valmiki Ramayana references, start the software, put it on timer, not even a day's difference in entire life of Ram would come. Whatever has been
Amazing.
narrated
That's
by
really
Valmiki,
amazing.
you will see everything in the sky, sequentially, appropriately, correctly, and precisely, I add. And that would be only that one date, which I have said is date of birth 5114 BC. 2 years prior, Putreshti Yagya, things start, and he's going right up to Sri Lanka. But what I wanted to preface before just passing on to the next, what I did is, I said after we determine the astronomical date, that of course is the most solid proof. Because those astronomical positions cannot be observed in the sky on any other date and time during last 25,920 years. I will like to request you that I have made use of two softwares, Planetarium and Stellarium. Reason is straight. Earlier I was using Planetarium, but this Planetarium software was discontinued by Fogware company in 2008-9. Now my conscience told me that if I write a book and refer to a software which is not available, then it's unfair. People can't verify the truth. So I found that there is a Stellarium software which uses NASA ephemeris. It's NASA software basically. So I made use of that and found that after 40 days of Planetarium, all those sky positions would be seen. Reason is clear. That's why Planetarium had to discontinue. Planetarium had corrected its calendar only for the Christian era, whereas Stellarium has corrected itself right up to 13,200. Correction is only of that, 365 days, 6 hours is not the duration of the year, which was believed to be earlier. It's actually 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, 46 seconds. This difference of 11 minutes, 14 seconds becomes 1 day in 131 years. So all through, a correction had to be made. That's why Planetarium had to discontinue itself also, because they had done only for the Christian era. And that explains the 40 days difference straight away. Same sky as described by Valmiki, same Chaitra month Shukla Paksh ki Navami on the date of birth, and noon time, jab we celebrate Ram Navami, you will see the same sky exact as described by Valmiki. And then you relate with, you go through sequential. In my book, I have given 24 sky position sequential. I have tried to beautify them, tried to mark them. You can't change them, but you can take them to Photoshop and then put a circle and write something outside. So this is how the entire astronomical dating goes along, if you are only talking about astronomical. Then of course, for why I wanted to preface is, astronomical dating had to be supplemented with so many other evidences, archaeology, paleobotany, hundreds of other. The amazing thing was, I will extract those things from Valmiki Ramayana and they will take me back to those 7,000 years back. That was they went one by one, added.
I mean, it's amazing, right? I don't know, I'm finding it really unique. I mean, imagine looking at the sky when Ram was born, and that is something that you can map today. It's really amazing what man has created now, I would say, softwares. So ma'am, when you went to Abdul Kalam and he spoke to you about a project, he also said that Valmiki, when he was writing, has already left proofs and evidences in his writing. So, and he then suggested that you should go and study oceanography. Now, why was that?
Let me preface this with one sentence, that after I had done the entire astronomical dating and gathered a whole lot of archaeological and paleobotanical evidences, that is, how do archaeology means bow and arrow, utensils, ring, or headgear, that ornament for the forehead, and wheat, rice, tel, so many hundreds of things mentioned in Ramayana, all found through archaeological evidences, given dating of, carbon dating of 7,000 years back. Now, on 10th January 2011, I went to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He was my ideal, he remains my ideal, and he will remain ideal. I have yet to see a man of his caliber and his, positivity yet to meet.
Can you hear her at the back? You can?
Can you? Yeah. Okay. Now, on 10th January 2011, I went to him and his PA told me, take 5 minutes, not more than that. So many people are waiting. I said, okay. So I went and I told him what my subject is. He said, sit down. I have been wanting somebody to write history like that for so many years. And you sit down, you tell me what you have done so far. So I told him I have done the astronomical dating, this is the date comes, and this is what is my archaeological finding, this is what was my paleobotanical finding. He said, did you go to the Oceanography Institute? I had not heard. I said, sir, what is that? He said, this is National Institute of Oceanography, Goa. You must go there, and you must also go to the Setu. Until you prove to this country that Ram Setu was walkable at walkable level on the dates you determine astronomically, nobody is going to listen to you. This is what he told me. And he also gave me another suggestion at that time. He said, have you not read the genealogy chart of Ram in Ramayana? I said, sir, yeah, I have read. There are ancestors mentioned, more than 60 ancestors mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana before he gets married to Sita. That is narrating. If still all Ramayana customs continue till date. That's my another different kind of study. All before marriage, as we say, father, grandfather, great-grandfather names, all.
Yeah, 7 generations.
Yeah.
Yes.
They all similar. They taking fire, feras around. All those things are mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana. Now, then he said, if you have genealogy, and he says precisely Ram dates of events in the life of Ram would come somewhere around 7,000 years back. Oh, his knowledge was tremendous. Maine kaha, sir, how do you say that? He said, very simple. Valmiki Ramayana tells that equinox of the earth was pointing to Punarvasu Nakshatra, and 7,000 years back it was there.
Really amazing. He was
I
really
was
knowledgeable
so
person.
convinced, so relieved that at least my date is coming somewhere near that only. Then I said, sir, I promise I'll do both the things. But where do I get the genetic studies? He said, you connect the genealogy charts with the genetic studies and prove whether these were indigenous genes or he never believed in Aryan invasion theory. He said, you prove this also, whether these were indigenous genes or they were inflow from somewhere else. So I went and did both the things. He told me that for South Asia, genetic studies are being carried out by Estonian Biocenter Tartu, that is adjacent to Russia. So I quickly went and contacted both National Institute of Oceanography, Goa. I was lucky to get an appointment with the director there, Dr. Rajiv Nigam. I went there, asked him if they have any study on sea level fluctuations. Oh, he gave me complete lecture how they determine, and he gave me a 1996 study done for sea level fluctuations. And it was so relieving when I saw inside 7,000 years back, the bridge was, Ram Setu was 3 meters below, and water level of the ocean was also 3 meters below. I can't tell you how much relieved I was, because I was thinking if there is a disease somewhere. So he came to deliver lectures. I have conducted various seminars, invited in fact the specialists of all subjects from all over the world. I wanted to be 100% sure that whatever I say scientifically should not be wrong. That was my concern. Went on huge, arrangements were made every time. But then I was lucky also, or maybe Valmiki was so precise. Every time the things will tell you. Then I connected Estonian Biocenter, Tartu. Luckily, there was one Indian there, Gyaneshwar Chaubey, somebody referred to me. And I got in touch with him. He said, yes, they have done a lot of study of Indian tribes and less of caste populations. The interesting part, he told me that they have done a detailed study of Kol, Bhil and Gond tribes. You know, that Gunishad was a Kol, Bhilni was a Bhil, and all these Dandakwan people were Gondwana, Gond people. And so I invited him on my seminar in 2014 that please come and make your presentation. So he made a presentation, and later on he wrote an article in PLOS ONE also, very prestigious magazine, Public Library of Sciences worldwide. And he gave complete details through genetic studies that these tribes have been existing in India for last more than 10,000 years. And there is no gene inflow. They are totally indigenous. They are still there. We all know. Their populations have increased, not dwindled. They have increased. So, and he also gave the study of caste populations, indicating that the genetic structure of both is very similar. And also indicating that there has been no inflow. There are evidences of outflow. How sad. What we have done to our history. What we have done to our heritage. We could have raised our heads with pride. Our people have gone and educated and civilized the people all over the world, and we are teaching the falsehood. This I can say today. In 1999, somebody could have said this to me, that you are teaching the falsehood, because I was believing that. I was believing that to be true. So this is how, in both ways, it is. But oceanography won't be complete until I say what Dr. Kalam told me, and I did. I went, and then I went to Setu also. In a very crude manner, I requested, I was lucky, I had 2 students of mine posted as DC, Deputy Commissioner IAS, and his brother, who was in income tax, my junior. Both of them made my day. The way they showed me the entire Ram Setu structure from Dhanushkoti, and then they took me to a piece through boat, to a part, which you could actually see is a boundary kind of thing, and filling in between. So they said this is the place where people used to come when glass boats were allowed, but Karunanidhi had discontinued them by the time I went. And I went right up to that place, told the boatman to measure the depth. It came to be 2.8 meters. It came to be 2.8 meters. And imagine that whole structure is actually natural. There are, Bareti, shoals, or you can say hills, or you can say islands. And it's a running structure connecting India and Sri Lanka. If water level of the sea goes down by 4-5 meters tomorrow, this will be a land route for anyone. The only thing is, in between there are some parts where filling had to be done. That filling had been got done in 5 days by Nal, who was the chief, architect in Rama's army. And then I came back, because we read our books with our prejudices. I knew that he had constructed the whole bridge, that Tulsi, Ramayana and stones going and getting connected was on my mind. When I read it again, it was so clear that in 5 days, 5 fillings were done with one, and its materials are written, what kind of trees and what kind of rocks, all were there. And this is how 5 days on 2 sides, heavy ropes were put. 2 kind of words he has used, yantras. The big rocks were pulled through yantras. That's used in Valmiki Ramayana. And for the measuring tools also, I am forgetting the word. There is a word used there. And ropes are held. And you can exactly see, in my book also, I have given 2-3 pictures. Small little portion of the island, the bridge is 50 kilometers long, but then small little portion you can see the 2 boundaries filled inside with the filling. They are intact. One is on Indian side, not very far from Dhanushkoti, other is on Talai Manar side. I went to both. So this is how, and interesting part is, no, have not you ever wondered that what happened to that Setu Samudram project? Where did it go off when they wanted to blast the Setu part? Only this part, which was filled up. Because next is all natural formation. They wanted to blast this near Sri Lanka and near India. You would laugh when I tell you, and I quote Subramanian Swami's book Ram Setu, where he said that first the Dredging Corporation of India imported a dredger worth 2,200 crore from Holland, took it to Setu area to blast. The dredger broke into two and sunk. Then they imported a crane from Spain for 1,700 crore, and then it went to retrieve the dredger. It also broke and sunk. And then the Russian engineer came, who was the in charge, to inspect. He broke his leg and came back. No, for the devotees, it was a divine intervention. But for the scientists, the fact was very clear. They had no doubt that it was a misadventure. Why? Because on the north side of the sea, surface of the sea, I'm not talking of the water level, surface of the sea is higher. On the south side of the bridge, surface of the sea is lower. So the moment you blast, the entire deposit comes on you to break. They say it was a misadventure, wrongly planned operation. So that is it.
Why did they want to break it?
Huh?
Why did they want to break it? On those people?
Politics of the country. They wanted to prove there is no Ram Setu. And the actual purpose they said is trade. They said, abhi to they have to bring the things from North India to South to the land route.
Yeah.
Or they have to circle the entire Sri Lanka. It was because of that reason. But then, can you really break the land? They didn't realize it's a land route between natural land route. And this was I of course studied even 400 years back. Holland, Dutch people tried this. There have been various attempts in history, but then finally they settled down that it can't be done.
Good for us. So, ma'am, you did mention something which is archaeobotany. Can you throw a little more light on that? What is actually archaeobotany and how did it help you?
Okay. First, let me tell all of you know archaeology, we know ancient sites, we go and excavate, find the artifacts and get them carbon dated. And we determine this is how we all do, no doubt to anyone. Anybody would like to ask any question on this? No. Now, what has happened is when you go for archaeological excavation, whatever is found there is all brought. If they don't bring only some kind of artifact or a sample, the dust actually is even more important, because that dust will contain the evidence of what plants were there at that time. So this entire thing would be transported either to Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleobotany or to Ahmedabad Physical Laboratory. There are only two institutions doing the archaeobotany research. Archaeobotany is a sub-branch of archaeology where the botanical artifacts dug out from the ancient sites, from the belonging to ancient times. Archaeo means ancient itself. Present botany has nothing to do. So you take out those deposits, you take them to a physical lab, and carbon dating is done there. Identification is done what the product could be. So archaeobotany my concern was that this can also be used as a tool to date. How? Because Valmiki Ramayana has mentioned so many plants. If I take out a list of those plants and then I correlate them with the paleobotanical reports, you would all understand that I am neither an archaeologist nor a paleobotanist, archaeobotanist. But then I can certainly do this, that take out the plants and compare the reports. If they match, very great. So I took out the list of plants from Valmiki Ramayana, like whatever were found in Chitrakoot, what were found in Panchavati, or what was seen in the coastal area when Ravan was coming to Panchavati to abduct Sita. So all those were taken out, listed. Then I did contact several paleobotanists, but then I stuck to one who I trusted the most, Premendra Priyadarshi. He is in UK, he writes books on this, and he is a scientist, genetist also. He is written already in Quest of the Dates of Vedas, based on plants only, mentioned in Vedas. If they are found in India, what is their date? Now then, I found out with him and related those Ramayan plants with the archaeobotanical dates of several plants found. Oh, it is amazing. We are so unlucky that these things are never taught in our school and college books. These reports have not been incorporated. Nobody has upgraded our syllabus and inputs. They are lying in archaeobotanical institutes or archaeology institutes and not made a part of the study. I'll only give 2 examples, nothing more. Panchavati. His view was that Panchavati would not mean 5 Vat Vriksh. It would mean 5 kind of Vat Vriksh existing in that area. For ficus they call. Though he said that his research has revealed that 5 kind of ficus or Vat trees, which include Vat, जो हम बरगद कहते हैं, people, or Udambara, Udambri, and one more name. He said all these 5 varieties were in India, found in India 7,000 years back. There are evidences and studies, and they are still found in that area. Amazing, amazing. And second thing he pointed out is, you read entire Valmiki Ramayana, you will find reference to banana only in South India. Only when Ravan is traveling through the coastal area to Panchakot. That is mentioned there that he went along the coast. He says, I can guarantee you that banana was there grown in India 7,000 years back, only in South India and coastal region. It was not there in North India. In North India, it came 1500 to 2000 years later. And there are books I have quoted. D. Lange is the main researcher. So this is how ultimately the entire paleobotanical research of references in Ramayana also took me to 7,000 years back.
So you're constantly going back to 7,000 years, right?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every research would lead me to 7,000 years back.
You mentioned in your book that Vanars were not monkeys.
Oh,
So how,
very interesting. Well, why did this bother me? This bothered me because when you read Tulsi Ramayan, Tulsi's Vanars are bandar, literally bandar. This is how he treats them. But when you read Valmiki Ramayan, it is impossible to believe that they are monkeys, because he is saying that they were all educated, they were knowledgeable, they had kingdoms to lose and kingdoms to win, they had their social moral values, and
they were educated, right? And they were literate and they were educated. They were
literate, and their women were very educated, highly respected. Both Ruma and Tara were so highly respected. And so Valmiki is not really treating them as monkeys. It was a big challenge. I thought, how do I determine that they were not monkeys? If they were not monkeys, who were they? Then, when I kept on doing research, going back, I found a book by Arnold Wright. Arnold Wright. The title of the book was Southern India, Its History, People, Commerce and Industrial Assets, something like that. It was published in 1914-15. It was more of an encyclopedia compilation of various kind of gazetteers which were issued during British times. And in this, he had mentioned that in South India, there are certain tribes which are monkey-faced. Some features of their faces are looking like monkeys. And they have a system of tying a loincloth, making a tail. They make artificial tail through their loincloth, take it out through their dhoti. And that they are slightly smaller, in slightly lesser size than the normal other human beings. And they are very agile and active. And in fact, this Arnold Wright himself connected them to Ramayana. He said this is what Valmiki was mentioning, and over 7,000 years, lot of changes would have come. Their population in 1871 Gazetteer was supposed to be 3,54,544. This is also he has mentioned. This is in the British Gazetteer. These were the number of these people. I have mentioned in my book, quoted everything. So, to my mind, what Valmiki mentioned are not really monkeys, but they are monkey-faced tribes who took probably longer to get into the physical human form as we all have, but their brains were developed. They could fight wars, they could construct bridges, they had kingdoms, everything was there. So it is probably this, and that's why you read, if you read Valmiki Ramayana and Tulsi Ramayana, how Hanuman's tail was put on fire, there is a lot of difference. Valmiki only mentioned that to his tail, a long cotton cloth was tied up, made very long, and then some oil was sprinkled on it and it was put on fire. And he in the end also writes that his tail was not even hurt, only the cloth was burnt. See, this is how I found the similarity in the two descriptions. Whereas for Tulsi, it's a long tail. So this is how I concluded that Valmiki Ramayana mentions about Vanar tribes, not about monkeys.
And in the same way, did you also get some conclusive proof about the existence of the river Saraswati?
Oh, that's tremendous. I think anybody who says Saraswati did not or does not exist, excuse my language, has to be blind, has to be deaf, has to be lame. Because in this country, there are so much evidences of Saraswati, that you have to sit in your own world in one room and lock yourself and say, I don't want to see anything relating to Saraswati. Then you can say it is not there. Why I am saying that? Why I am saying, as we evolve, as we go ahead, there are so many new studies and researches which come. Let me quote through 5 disciplines Saraswati evidence has come. First of all, remote sensing imagery. India didn't do it. India never takes initiatives, never used to take initiative. First was done by Landsat satellite of USA. They said that their entire courses of ancient river system lying, under the earth, dry courses of river system. French spot satellite said this. European satellite said this. Then Government of India through ISRO asked their Jodhpur center to carry out they were afraid of using the word Saraswati. They authorized them to carry out the study of paleo channels of satellite imagery of paleo channels of North Indian rivers. That was the official project assigned by ISRO with budget assigned to Jodhpur center. The head of the project was G.R. Sharma. He was the director of ISRO center. So they carried out a whole lot of space imagery, and they have a system of whatever remote sensing images are there, converting them into colors, brightening the colors, and complete detail of Saraswati paleo channel. It was a mighty river system, first starting with 3 tributaries, 5 tributaries, 7 tributaries, same way, 7 distributaries, 5 distributaries, how each one dwindled, where it went, and they gave complete study and report. It's available on their net. Quite a bit of detail is available in my book. This is the book, incidentally. I think it should be available in the bookshop also. Then, after they gave this, then came the geology. Geological Survey of India carried out the complete study. Why has it been happening that rivers of India have been drifting westward and eastward? You find now, when you look at the map of India, you find that Delhi and around area, Rajasthan is all gone dry, rivers are either. There is a complete detail of tectonic movements, disturbances in the Aravallis, and you would have all heard when you hear of earthquakes, fault line from Bhuj to Himalayas, right there. This fault line keeps on getting higher and higher. The western side rivers keep on drifting westward, eastern side rivers keep on drifting eastward. Now, incidentally, both ISRO and Geological Survey of India concluded firmly that actually Satluj was a tributary of Saraswati. Slowly it drifted, it flowed for some time alone also, then it went into Byas, through Byas it went into Sindhu. And Yamuna was a tributary of Saraswati, which slowly drifted eastward, and slowly it came and merged into Ganga. There was a very famous book, article written by Valdia, a eminent geologist, Padma Bhushan also, who said, गंगा ने सरस्वती का पानी चुराया? मतलब यमुना जो है वो यहाँ आ गई. सो ये जियोलॉजी हो गई. अब आर्कियोलॉजी में there are more than 3,200 sites in India which have been excavated, and more than 2,000 out of it are along the ancient Saraswati courses. Ancient Saraswati courses. And out of these, some of you would have definitely heard Dholavira, Kalibhangan, Rakhi Gadi, Bhirana, all Haryana. Our Haryana has more than 96 sites of Saraswati belt. No, the archaeologists gave a complete, there are books and books. Michael Danino wrote on Saraswati only and the archaeological sites along it. And the thing didn't stop there. Hydrological, then one had to go. I went through 5. Hydrological evidences means sometimes the earthquake takes place and the subsurface water comes up. Such water of Saraswati has come up in Haryana and in Bhuj. Scientists sit and analyzed it, found it's a Himalayan water. There is a very clear way of finding what is a sea water and what is a Himalayan water. And then en route, they dug some wells in Rajasthan and found that water was also Himalayan water. See, you have even hydrological evidences to tell you. And is it a coincidence that all these are at locations mentioned in Rig Veda and Ramayana? Is it a coincidence? All these are on location. Valmiki has very sound geography. He never goes wrong. He will tell you exactly if he has given the sequence of rivers, like when Bharat is coming from Kaike Pradesh, when Ram is gone to Banvas. So 2 rivers, Haradini and are not traceable now. But then he says it's Satluj, Saraswati, Ghaggar, present Ghaggar, Saraswati, part of Saraswati. And then you go to Yamuna, Ganga and Gomti. Sequence is the same, no error. So your geography, your geology, your hydrology, your archaeology, your remote sensing and worldwide remote sensing tells you that Saraswati is there, described as in our ancient Rig Veda and Ramayana or Mahabharata. By that time it has dwindled. So how can you close your eyes? You have to be stupid not to look at it, excuse my language, that you have to tell कि मैं तो ये पढ़ूंगा नहीं, फिर उसका तो कोई इलाज नहीं, मैं ये देखूंगा नहीं. What ISRO is saying, I will not hear. ISRO is all wrong. Geology surveys of India is all wrong. Our hydrology survey is all wrong. That is the only alternative. It's so much clear. And in fact, the latest report of all 5 disciplines, Water Resources Ministry constituted a committee in 2016, headed by no less a person than Mr. Valdia. Incidentally, I have been inviting him on my seminars. Great man. And there were ISRO scientists, there were geologists, there were hydrologists, there were archaeologists. They all concluded, and they even gave the courses of Saraswati River. And they also said where the subsurface waters can be revived for use. See, government always does something for use, wherever there is a water shortage, whether they can more easily, store water in those places. That is the report. After that, you still can say there was no Saraswati. I don't know how.
I think the best thing is that history should be rewritten, especially Indian history. It's very necessary that we rewrite it and then we, tell our next generations that this is not mythology, this is actually history.
Yeah. Actually, history and actual geography of past geography of your country.
Yes, yes, yes. I would like to open the forum for questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Are there mics?
Shall we share this and give to?
No, I think there should be some mics.
There is somebody giving the mic there.
I'm Keshav Chandra,
Hmm.
and my question is that you've spoken at length about the scientific evidence, which is, of course, absolutely amazing the amount of research you've done. But when Tulsidas ji wrote his Ramayana, which was a good 6,000 or 6,500 years later to Valmiki's, he had written it in Avadi to make it this thing for the common man. He had stressed on devotion, mythology and everything. But ma'am, I'm sure there must have been a whole lot of brilliant people, much lesser than you perhaps, in this intervening period to have established the scientific evidence, and then as a natural corollary, devotion always follows scientific evidence. So when Tulsidas ji wrote his Ramayana in Avadi, so it was, I think, very fine of him to have stressed more on mythology, more on devotion, more on spirituality. So what you said is just perfect, and what Tulsidas ji stressed upon is also equally perfect, because devotion follows scientific evidence. So there is no disparity between what you said and between what Tulsidas ji brought. So I think you agree with me now?
Shall I think if I have understood the question, I think it takes some. Valmiki is a contemporary admirer of Ram. He narrates his Ramayana through Love Kush in Ram Darbar itself. We all know, Naimisharanya, they go on sing. And then, after the contemporary admirer comes the, follower. Till that is also okay. After the follower comes the devotee. And this journey can take quite a few thousand years also, a few hundred years also. For example, in our current age, Sai, hai na? Sai Baba, or it takes some time. So, in fact, I don't find any contradiction after doing this scientific research. I don't find any contradiction in a contemporary admirer. Valmiki criticized Shri Ram on so many places, at so many places, and a follower and a devotee, because they are saying the same thing. Devotee just likes to add a little bit of mystique and a poetic imagination. That's all. That's all. Basic crux remains the same. Yeah.
I think basically, Ram, if we think he is a historical figure, would be much more inspiring than just as God, I would feel.
Yeah.
Next.
The thing that about the bandar you are saying, is the word bandar there in the Ramcharitmanas, or it is Vanar? Vanar. So how I understand it is that Vanar is the nar who lives in one. One में रहने वाला नर is Vanar.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful
That
way
is
to
the-
say.
that is a basic way of putting
Yeah.
it. No, but then maybe our ancestors might have been living in some forest. There is no bar on those people shifting from the forest to the. But there is a clear distinction in Valmiki Ramayana. Any one of you have ever read that Sugriv, Hanuman, or Angad used any sword or bow and arrow? No. They use the stone tools and the trees. And this is what your archaeology will also supplement. That 6,000, 7,000 years back in South India, you dig stone tools. Whereas in North India, you are digging swords and arrowheads. That is how it goes. Huh?
Yes.
There is a notion about stones of Ram Setu that they used to float only when Ram is written on them.
Please repeat.
Will you please repeat? Yeah.
There is a notion about stones in Ram Setu that they used to float only when Ram is written on them. What you want
I have
to say about
understood
that?
your question. I'll answer it because I did a lot of research on this question. Actually, Tulsi ji has mentioned that Nal and Neel wrote Ram and the stone floated. Well, that is again Astha, as you put it. But then, actual thing is, I have gone there and found that there is that 50-kilometer long stretch in natural formation. What had been done is that finally, when they filled up the places to make it even, they had spread some kind of stones over that. And these stones included a lot of coral stones. You all know coral stones would only float on water. These are still available. You will still be able to find people with astha, devotion. They bring one stone from there and they will keep it in their drawing room in the glass and they'll say, this is the stone of Ram Setu we have brought from there. No, what has happened is actually they were not floating stones. Actually, the bridge was made on the final layer which was put across the built one and the natural ones. They were also pieces of coral stones and coral stones would float. So Tulsi had a basis to say. Some people would have come and said that stones float there. So Astha?
I read that there were some pumice-like of material, the stones. There were some pumice-like stones which have got holes.
Which have got holes in it. Yeah.
Coral stones.
That is
will-
coral.
Yeah,
Coral
they're
stones
light.
are having holes and they will float.
I'll just ask one question.
Aap karenge.
Only one more.
Okay,
The time.
I have the mic. Can I take precedence on the question?
Okay.
So, my name is Bhavin, and this has been a very enlightening session. I mean, I'm a firm believer of Ramayana and Mahabharata as mythology, and scientific evidence and the way you have put it helps to change my thought. And I'm sure that applies to a lot of us. So I have a few questions, maybe a little vague, and as a layman, maybe very basic. If Valmiki Ramayana was written with so much accuracy on so many different research fields, at what point did it turn into mythology in over these 6,000-7,000 years? Second, I mean, if I'm assuming you're also probably not the first person to have done some research at this level. Otherwise, we would have to be ashamed of ourselves. How come that has not come out into the into forums of education and world discussions of such an important and a huge event which governs our lives? So how come the state of affairs are
Yeah,
like
I have
this?
understood your question. And I have understood your question. It's unfortunate that we were not independent for 1,000 years. When you are ruled by somebody else, the ruler is not going to say that you were more civilized than us 5,000 years back or 7,000 years back. They are not certainly going to say. They would like to mention that they were more civilized than us. So one factor is that. The other is that you get vested interest people who have written something based on that Western philosophy, leftist philosophy, or whatever biases and prejudices. And you keep on propagating them. You want your books to be in. Third is not keeping your eyes and ears open. I might write, in 1999, if I had written the book, I would have written it as mythology. I'm very clear. Now the question is, keep your eyes and ears open. All these scientific researches which I have relied upon have basically come during last 30 years, basically. So you had to keep your eyes and ears open, and mine is only a tip of the iceberg. These departments are full of evidences. They are full of evidences. What I wrote in my book is also tip of the iceberg. I have a lot. There is a need that we write scientific history. We forget, they let the traditional history be there, like any fiction, novel, interesting books. Let both the subjects go. People who want to read leftist, rightist, fiction, history, traditional history I call it, let them read. Why can't we just end the dispute with this, let the traditional history be there and let there be a scientific history? Scientific history can't be an art subject. It is a pure science. I tell you, all subjects are pure science. All evidences are pure scientific evidences. That's why it took me so many years that I was an art student. 4 years I read the basics of archaeology, geology, oceanography, and then I had to contact so many people and learn from them. I never minded sitting alone with them also, learning and understanding things. So this is what all of you and all of us need to do, that now we run a movement, request the government to constitute a committee to write scientific history of this country, not only of this country. I am very sure 20 years later, the whole world would be rewriting the history. Because how can you ignore the Holocene? How can you say 1500 BC you were uncivilized because the current Holocene started 12,000 years back? You are under an obligation to tell what your country was doing for last 10,000 years.
So I'm sorry, our time is up. So the author will be available at the author signing zone as well as at the bookstore. So you could talk to her then. I'm sorry, but it will be unfair for the next forum. So thank you so much, all of you, for so much interest, and thank you, ma'am. It was a wonderful
Thank you
session.
so much. I like to add that I am ready to answer any number of questions one-to-one outside. Any number of